Yeah, dear viewers, you are welcome to another segment on Daybreak Africa. Today, we want to discuss another topic, very germane issue, that has to do with the state of the nation, most especially on the issue of security. And we are having an expert with us this particular hour. Who exactly are we talking about? We are talking about the commandant of the Ondo State Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, in person of Dr. Ahmed Abodurin. Dr. Ahmed Abodurin, you are welcome on board, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. Of course, this is a man who is already controlling the whole command of the Ondo State command of the NSCDC in the state. Sir, to start with, how civil is civil defense?
Well, thank you very much. I want to say that civil defense is very, very civil. The fact that we even had civil to our name makes it civil. In our operations, we are very civil. And don't also forget that civil defense was once a paramilitary organization, which is a voluntary outfit. So we have always been part of the community, and there's no way you can, when you have been part of the community, you cannot just suddenly separate yourself from that community. And the history of civil defense itself shows that it is pro-civilian organization, and that's why you see this appellation that we always put, that's defending the defenseless. It is assumed that members of the communities are the defenseless people, so you have to be with them. There's no way you can actually assist or defend people you don't know.
So that is to tell us that indeed you are civil.
Civil.
All right. Thank you, sir. One thing that is not known to many Nigerians, and will need the clarification from you, is this issue of having a kind of title to your name, comparing to other sister agencies of yours, like the police, the army, the road safety, and every other uniform outfit there. You as a person, when I was introducing you, I introduced you to be Dr. Ahmed Abodurin. Why having titles to your name?
Well, the issue of title is, as a civil organization, one could also have access to whatever, particularly when such title is professional. It is not a chieftaincy title, even if it is. But then this one, if you say Dr. Ahmed Abodurin, well, it is probably because Ahmed Abodurin is actually a doctor, hold my PhD, so I should be able to also add it if I want to add it. But then, even if you look at other organizations, when they mention probably in the police, you mention the IG, you are going to put his, at times it's an allergy, at times it's a minister, at times it's all that. That one is just basically you have access to it because it's a professional title. Well, in the military, their own is a bit different. If you are a commissioned officer in the military, your prefix starts with your rank. So if you are a lieutenant, you are a lieutenant. If you are a captain, you are a captain.
Even if he is also a PhD holder?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. But then, that is peculiar to us in Nigeria. In some other countries, like in Austria, you will see Major General, then you see Doctor in brackets. I've seen them. It depends on the policy of each organization. So there's nothing so sacrosanct about it, depending on the policy of each organization. In some other countries, they combine the military title with the civil title. You see a general who probably is also a PhD holder that will see general doctor, so. Even on his name tag, it's there, depending on the policy of each organization. But if you also look at it in Nigeria today, you see so many of paramilitary outfits, when they want to mention their name, particularly their head that speak to press all the time, you're going to see that doctor. I know today Dr. Boboyo Yeyeme is the head of road safety, so it's always there. But in the military in Nigeria, I know that their policy is that your prefix should be your rank, particularly if you are a commissioned officer.
But just before we go further, What of if you're junior officer?
Yeah.
Maybe by virtue of, maybe in the course of pursuing his academic career, and is able to get to this PhD level.
Yeah.
He too will be bold enough to say he's also doctor, right?
Of course, even if he's a sergeant, if he's a doctor, it's a professional title. He works for it. That one is different from calling himself Akogun, so, and all that, because that one may make you to be to look bogus or something like that. If you have acquired it, why not? You have acquired it. In fact, the truth of the matter is that the Commandant General of Nigeria Security and Civil Defense today is a PhD holder, and that way you see his name, it's going to be either Dr. Abubakar Ahmed or Abubakar Ahmed, PhD, MNI. It is there. Again, he also has a way of encouraging scholarship that he has even brought people together that if you have attained this level of education, I'm bringing you together to make sure to be more useful to society, to be more useful to the core. So in our own organization, it's an organization that the Commandant General will always celebrate knowledge, so that when we know you, we now see what we can contribute to the development, not only of the organization, but to the development of society at large.
Okay. But it's not allowed, when you are a chief in your community, to add it to your name while still in service?
Well, when you want to also go and get chieftaincy title, you need the permission of the Commandant General. That's the authority. If you are permitted to get it, fine. But I've not seen such case where you see somebody who is going to be the publishing officer of Ondo State Command of Civil Defense chief. We have not been doing that. So, but then when you are in service too, there's limit. There are certain things there are certain titles that you cannot just go and start fighting for, because it may compromise your interest. But if it is academics don't compromise anybody's interest. It enhances it. Okay. Particularly when what you have even gone to do is so much relevant to what you have done. For instance, my own area of specialization is even in peace and strategic studies. So if I have gotten to that height in the same field of conflict management, of strategic studies, of peace building, and I'm in civil defense, of course it is in line. So, but it will be another thing entirely if I now want to become the Balogun of my community, and I now want to write the Commandant General to give me that permission. So that may be too bogus. I don't know. I'm just saying that it may not look neat because you are still serving. And there could be a time that you need to fight a war as Balogun. And the job you are doing requires that you should be peaceful. You should only fight criminals. So that one, you may not have access to being granted such permission, because it will compromise your there will be double interest. The interest there will be what they call what will be called divided loyalty. As Balogun of your community, probably you are going to be more loyal to your
community than to the country.
Community and the Oba than to the country. So, but if it is something that will enhance you, that will enhance the community, that will enhance society, that will enhance the organization, it is allowed.
But what will now happen if, with your own PhD and the PhD of the Commandant General, you now come up to be a professor before him? So how will you balance it?
I don't even know how the possibility of becoming a professor, I don't even know how it will exist. But then if we have a training school, for instance, if we have a university, and then have a University of Civil Defense, and probably my whole area is, of course we have a professor in our midst, who is also not even, so it depends. So if I'm working, if I am, but then he has probably acquired his professorial chair before becoming an officer in civil defense. Probably during the voluntary era, he has been going to school and all that and whatever. But then if we have a university and I am in the university as a researcher, it doesn't really matter, even if my rank is not more than a superintendent. But if I'm a researcher, why not? It's just like you're asking whether if I am a son, whether I can hide it. Of course I will. if I'm working with civil defense and there is the senior advocate of Nigeria, I apply for it and I'm granted as a lawyer within the service, I will put it. These are professional titles. They are not just social titles that you do to.
Okay, thank you, our able commandant. Those ones are just by the way. Let's go into the issue of security now. Of course, there is no doubt in the fact that our country is being faced with this issue of security here and there, almost on daily basis. And being a security officer, a senior security officer for the matter, and you are in charge of a state, what efforts is your command putting in place to guide the school children in Ondo State? Bearing in mind, sir, that of recent, these bandits, they went into a school, they burgled the school, they took away the children, and it has been happening and reoccurring often and often, and no state is spared. So what effort are you putting in place to make sure that these school children are guided?
Yeah, thank you very much. To start with, when this Commander General came in, what he first did was to, again, even do a kind of vulnerability assessment of all schools in Nigeria. Because in his mind, he actually intends to give schools maximum protection that they deserve. Because initially, you know, civil defense is in charge of critical national assets infrastructure protection. Then, initially, the school was not part of the critical national assets. But when it was discovered that even schools are now being target of all these hoodlums, schools are now part of our critical national assets that must be protected. So that was why it started by even have a kind of vulnerability assessment of all schools in Nigeria. And the assessment is there and the analysis are there. Now in Ondo State, we did the same vulnerability assessment as directed by the Commandant General. And what do we assess? We want to assess the location of the school, whether the school is fenced, whether they have security operatives guarding it, either private or public, either conventional or private guards. So when you know all these things, these schools, do they fall in rural areas? Do they fall in urban centers? What are the crimes, common to that area where the schools are located? So having done that, then the Commandant General now came up with the idea of having a female squad, a special female squad that were specially trained in weapon handling to start guiding these schools. Then the question would be, why female squads? Yes, because women are mothers, and mothers know how to tender children. So now you have to also train them to be tough so that they can withstand any invasion or anybody that wants to attack the school. So they are mother traits, they are motherhood traits that they will make them to be very, very tender with children. Again, as a woman, they know the needs of children more than men do. But then they have also been trained to be very, very tough to withstand whatever is coming. So that is why they have been established. And in Ondo State, we have also established the female squad. In fact, we properly commissioned it alongside with the inauguration of a training ground that we built, which we even named after the Commandant General. So they are there on ground to be moving from one school to another. If you also look at our past records, we have started going to schools to train them now. We trained over 300 teachers. We have already trained over 2,000 students of a federal government college, and we are moving from one school to another. Besides that, we have told the governor, and the governor is very, very at home with it, that we don't have enough personnel, including the female squad, that will be in all schools permanently. Okay. Because we have 1,606 secondary schools in Ondo State. So if we want to distribute us to be one per school, then we'll have problem with our operations, because we would have sent everybody.
Sorry, sir. Are you saying that they will just be going to the school and be coming back, checking on this school today, school A today, then they go to school B tomorrow?
Do vulnerability assessment, do patrol, particularly those ones that are boarding schools.
But what of those at the vulnerable areas, the riverine area?
Yes, those there, they will need some permanent people to be with them. But what I'm saying is that if we want to station our officers, our men, in all schools permanently, we wouldn't have that kind of resources. So what we are doing now, what we want to do now, which the governor is home at with, is the fact that we want to pick teachers from each school, maybe 2 teachers per school, bring them together for a few days to train them on school protection and some other things, on personal security and so on and so forth. Now, they will become conscious. Now, these teachers go back to school and also start building the skills of the children. Like it's been done in every other part of the world. If you go to the US now, they have what they call the sentencing guide, where that even as a college student, you know that there's a cliche: if you don't have the time, don't do the crime. Meaning that if you don't have the time to spend in prison, don't commit crime. If you go to Israel, they have boot camps during their holidays that they train their children on how to be very, very security conscious and all that. Go to Cuba, the same thing is happening. Now, if we have those ones there on ground, the teachers will be able to also help.
Okay, like how many of your personnel are you training towards this thing we're talking about?
Yeah, we are training at least 5 personnel per local government. So when we do that,
5 per local government?
Yes, 5 per local government. Who will now go and train, who will now go and be monitoring these already trained teachers? So the first, it is going to be in 3 phases. Phase 1 is training of our own personnel. Okay. They go back and train their own officers and men at the local government level. That is at the divisional level. You understand? That will be the stage 2. Then the 3rd stage will be the teachers. Then the 4th stage will now be the children, who are going to be the direct beneficiaries. They are so that they will. Let me quickly give you this instance. It's a short story. It won't take more than 1 minute or so. Okay. Now, there was this 14-year-old boy, schoolboy, somewhere in Pakistan. I think his name is Hassan. They have Hassan Day in Pakistan today. Now, what happened was that he saw somebody coming to their school, and he said, this guy dresses like a terrorist. Our teacher has told us that this is how terrorists dress, and I'm going to challenge him. So his colleagues were dragging him back. He freed himself and went and challenged the man. So as he was dragging with the man, the bomb went off. It killed the boy and killed the man. But the government is saying, look, we are going to honor the family of this boy. Even the name of the boy will not go into oblivion. Because if that man has entered that school, so many teachers and children would have gone, like we recorded in Bunuyadi and some other places here. Now, I always say it, if that man should come to Nigeria, our own child here will take him to the principal's office. Because we have not been telling them how insecure they are. We have not been telling them about security tips and all that. We have been telling them how to cut their nails, how to look neat and all that, and read their books. So the situation we have now is more than that now. We have to school everybody. We have to build the capacity of everybody, including our kids. So somewhere else, kids are so versatile, they are so vigilant that even what you adult cannot see, they will see it. But here in Nigeria, because we were secured, we have not been doing it. And that is what the Commandant General is looking at by ensuring that apart from this female squad that will be monitoring and protecting the schools, then we are going to also build the capacity of the teachers and the children. Now, these people that will train per local government will now be, because we are doing a curriculum for them. We are going to give them a curriculum that is going to follow. It's not going to be part of school curriculum. It will just be like, you want to enter your class in the morning, 2-3 minutes at the assembly, you tell them what rape is and how to avoid it. You tell them what security consciousness is. You even tell them the security operatives, the security agencies that you have in Nigeria. People don't even know what is what. They don't know who to go and contact when this one happens to them. And that is why they want to. So we will tell them this is Nigeria Army. This is what they do. And this is how you can also assess them. This is Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps. This is police. This is immigration. This is EFCC. It won't take more than 2-3 minutes in the morning. And you will do it every day. Just like it is being done in some other civilized countries. Of course, it will. If anybody should have the opportunity of going to secondary school in Ondo State, I can assure you in the next 2-3 years, that person will be a security conscious person. In fact, during recruitment into various services, instead of asking everybody to run 50 kilometers to know who is strong, you would have also detected who and who is fit for what. you will have detected who has passion for security job. Because one of the problems we are having today is that people also go into security job because they are looking for a job. So it's not as if they really have passion for it. So, and when the challenges start coming, and that is why when you are asking questions now, you'll be talking about corruption, talking about all these things. Because when you don't have passion for what you are doing, if you are looking for a job, yes, you'll be looking for things that will keep on giving you money, irrespective of whether you are doing it professionally or otherwise. So, with this kind of education, we would have also known that, look, this child will be very, very good. He will also know himself that, look, I know if I should go and join Nigeria Civil Defense Corps, I will be good. I know I want to join Nigeria Police, so I want to be a soldier. You will know. I mean, because you would go, it's a routine thing. Apart from the fact that you'll be able to also protect yourself. I will tell you what some other things is. Many of our kids go into this crime ignorantly, including drugs. They may not know. But when we have told them that, look, this is what they call drug and this is what we call drug abuse. Many of our kids go into cultism. Go to our various correctional facilities now. There are young men and women for cultism and all that and related offenses. So when we know that when this guy is behaving this way, this is what it means. This guy that is touching you here and here, like in the UK, there are girls now. If you want to, even when doctor wants to treat them, little girls, they will be telling you that they want a female doctor. Until they start educating them again that, look, when we are telling you that no opposite sex should touch you, there's an exception for the medical officers. Because they have what they call PANTS. PANTS is as an acronym for private, for say it out and so on and so forth. So much so that what is private is private. If it's your private part, no other sex, not even your father, can touch it. But look at it here now. You even have fathers that keep on impregnating their daughters. We have so many cases of that we are attending to.
Okay. Our commandant, it's not that the question I want to ask you is not that you are holding brief for other state commands, but at least you are one of them and you should be able to say it the way it is. How combatant is civil defense generally?
Yeah. I will tell you that they are combat ready to confront any happenings that will be happening. Don't forget that we have, apart from the fact that we have our HAM squad, we also have the quick response squad, we have a counter-terrorism unit, and all these units, we have SWAT unit. SWAT, has been, in fact, our personnel have been taken to South Africa. Some of our personnel were in Israel for counter-terrorism training and all that. So I can say they are combat ready for any eventuality. And if you also see that if you also look at the history of civil defense was given back to by the Nigerian Army during the Civil War. It was the civil defenders who are volunteers that were actually assisting in evacuating war victims and all that. So it was from there that they graduated into what is now conventional security outfit.
So sorry, sir. Sorry for cutting in. If I may get you right, you said civil defense have been in existence far back during Civil War. But of course, there's some years back, many years back, not up to that year that you mentioned. We always see them in the market controlling traffic and making waves for easy flow of traffic. Yes. So now it's two different things now from what you are saying.
The civil defense came about in 1967 during the Civil War. So they were working with the Nigerian Army. They were the one digging the bunkers where soldiers can lie in, where even civilians can lie in. They were the one educating the community about the public security, telling people to switch off their alarm. That's why they were calling them pana. So that the flying helicopter will not know that people are residing in that area. Now, after the war, there was this idea that they should be disbanded. But because of their performance, government said, look, leave them. Even in time of peace, we still need people that can ensure peace and orderliness of the society. So by doing what you said you saw them doing then, controlling traffic, doing crowd control, probably during accident and fire service, then rescuing people during fire disaster, during flood disaster and all that. So that was what they were doing until 2003 when, and even at that, they started helping in providing protection for the pipeline and all that. And President Obasanjo then just look at it that, look, if people are doing this without being paid, now, why don't we just incorporate them? Why don't we just make them to be functioning formally as one of the security outfits? So that was how it was signed into law by Act 2003 and Act 2007.
All right. I would like to ask you this very question. Of course, several occasions we've always been seeing your men, protecting lives and property. And sometimes they will be saddled with the responsibility of going, to guide a politician, to move in and out with a politician. But of recent, what we are seeing, more or less, I don't know, maybe it's part of what you ask them to do. I'm not talking to your own command alone. I'm talking generally now. Maybe it's part of what the Commandant General has them to do, that they should be helping female politicians to carry bags all around. Why carry rifle? So how do we juxtapose this? Seeing an officer on uniform carrying a handbag of a female politician or the wife of a politician all around, most especially in occasions.
Well, if you saw them, saw a civil defender carrying rifle and carrying bag, that would be strange to me as I'm hearing it. To be so strange. But then, let me put it this way: even by training, when you are in uniform, you are not even expected to even carry anything, including, apart from your weapon, including umbrella. That's why you use your raincoat. Because if you are occupied with your hand, then with which hand do you defend anything? Now, the idea of even following politicians, well, I want to say that people who are in position too, they are politicians. But not that they are just following politicians. Probably, it may happen. There's no way, for instance, the governor or the deputy governor or probably the head of one agency or the other that they would need protection. Government agency, not because you are the party leader somewhere or whatever. If you are occupying an office that is so sensitive, you are in charge of, this is man is in charge of revenue generation, and people could be running after him or whatever. This is man in charge of. You see us in those offices like you see us in JAMB, protecting the facilities there. You see us in correctional service, assisting our colleagues in the correctional service and all that. Now, if it is by office, fine, I don't know. But then, for anybody, even when doing that, for anybody to start carrying bag, rifle, bag together, that would be so hard. And if we have such situation, he or she must know what is also going for. That will be stark in discipline. Because by training, like I said, you are not even expected to start carrying things. With which hand do you now defend yourself, even if anything happens? So that will have also been, but then you can also rule out a Judas in every 12 disciples. There could be. But then, when we...
It's not that there could be, sorry sir. If you go to functions, most especially on weekend basis, you see them. So what would be the penalty for whosoever that is found guilty of this act?
When we get to the bridge, we'll cross it. You have seen it. I've not seen one. When I see one, or somebody just called my attention to one, but I want to assure you that we'll be on the we will keep on monitoring. When we see, it's not a one-man thing. A committee will be set up and it will be tried for the discipline, for violating the ethics of the profession.
Okay. We really appreciate you for giving us the opportunity out of your tight schedule to have us on board with you. We want to believe that when next we call on you, definitely you will oblige us.
We'll do that.
Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome, sir.
At this junction, we shall be calling it a day. Till tomorrow, when we shall meet again, I remain sincerely yours, Temi Tope Adedeji, saying that it shall be well with our country, Nigeria. Thank you.